second. So first of all, if there's any boards that posted for tonight that need to call themselves to order, I ask that you do that now. Select board's been called to order. Finance committee's been called to order. Okay, permanent building and recal called to order. Any other boards? Killam School Building Committee called to order. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. My name is Matt Cornelis. I'm the town manager, for those of you that don't know me. Welcome tonight. I'm glad you were able to come to our forum on both two important projects. First off, if you see the next slide, we have a QR code. If you did not get the handout that we handed out tonight, you can scan that QR code and it will appear on your phone. So, and that could also be passed around to friends or whoever wants that. So that's just basically 2 sheets, actually 1 sheet, 2-sided, about both projects and the details. So we're here tonight to share some very important information regarding the 2 town projects. They're 2 of our top priorities in town. Hope you've heard about them. One is this Killam School, and one is the Senior Center / Center for Active Living, or RECAL. As I said, these are 2 of our top priorities in town, and that's why we're having so many forums and discussions and meetings prior to town meeting. Both projects have been in the works for several years. I've been working in Reading for 10 years, and there were serious discussions about both of these projects prior to my tenure in Reading. So it's been quite a long time coming for both of these projects. For both projects, we've assembled a team of talented professionals, including town staff, resident volunteers, and consultants. And tonight you're going to hear from all of them on both projects. This is in preparation for a special town meeting that we're having on May 1st. Do we have any town meeting members in the audience? Show of hands if we have town meeting members. Great. Okay, that's good to see. So you'll hear more about it at town meeting, but hopefully tonight we wanted to do a little prep before town meeting to get the information out to people even ahead of time. We plan to go through both presentations tonight. Each presentation should take about 20 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for your questions, and we still are open to questions and answers. We've been doing that all along. That's a valuable part of our presentation tonight. We ask that you hold your questions until both presentations are over. That way we can get through everything we need to cover tonight, because there's a lot of important information. In Reading, we're fortunate enough to have a permanent building committee. That's made up of residents who are also building professionals. They are involved in both projects, and they're led by Pat Tompkins, who's here tonight, and we'll start by sharing some important information regarding the Permanent Building Committee. So I'll turn it over to Pat at this point.
Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Pat Tompkins, and I'm the chair of the Permanent Building Committee. I'm going to talk to you tonight a little bit about our committee, what our involvement will be in these projects, why we as a committee believe that it's time now for the town to be reinvesting in our public buildings, and most importantly, why we fully support both building projects tonight. So we're an appointed committee that was formed back in 2015. We were largely formed to oversee large-scale construction projects like the ones we're going to talk about tonight. Basically designed to bring together a group of design and construction professionals to help avoid some of the challenges the town has faced in the past when doing large-scale projects. In addition, we work with Joe Huggins in the facilities department on assessing the buildings on a continual basis. And about 5 years ago, we did an in-depth assessment of all the buildings in town. We presented out to multiple boards, the select board, school committee, FinCom, as well as town meeting. Could sum up our whole presentation pretty short by just saying, we've got a great facilities department. They maintain our buildings. They're in decent shape. They're getting old. And in the near future, we're going to have to act and do some things. So, well, the near future is here. I want to touch a little bit on my committee. Without going into details of every member, I think it's important to see that we have a really good variety of skill sets on the committee, from structural engineer, mechanical engineers, architects, and builders. We've even got a construction attorney on our committee which is good for a group like us to kind of keep us out of trouble. I've been on the building committee for 10 years. I really enjoy being on the committee. As a group, when we sit down to discuss a topic or review an issue, we all come from different perspectives. And I always say, when we sit down to talk about something, we rarely, I could even say we never agree on anything. But we sit down, we're able to talk through issues, collaborate, communicate, and eventually we kind of lean on the person in the room that's got the most expertise on whatever topic we're discussing. And we're always able to, despite disagreements, come to a consensus on what's the best thing for the town of Reading and how to move forward. So our building committee, according to the bylaw, when we have building projects like this, we form a building-specific committee where we take the permanent building committee and we add in other board members from, as you can see here, school committee, select board, FinCom, council on aging. This helps round out our experience, brings in our skill set, brings in the, the perspective of the end user. In addition to everyone you see here, we have town staff participating in the management of these projects. We've been involved in ReCal for about a year and Killam for probably over 3 years. Our town staff is absolutely fantastic. They do a great job. In addition to that, all that skill set, we have an owner's project manager and an architect on each project. Jane was referring to them as our A team earlier tonight when we were talking about it. So we've got a lot of talent managing and watching over these projects to make sure that they're delivered successfully for the town of Reading. So one of the things I want to touch on, big question some people might have, why 2 projects and why now? As I mentioned, we've done a pretty in-depth review of all the buildings in town. We always break them into 2 groups. We've got the school buildings and the municipal buildings. The municipal buildings are your fire station, police station, town hall, and obviously your senior center. These buildings are built with an expectation of a 50-year lifespan. Again, we have a great facilities department. They stretch that out the best they can. But with 8 school buildings, you're doing a replacement or a major renovation every 6 years. Every 7 years on the municipal side. Another way to look at it is just the overall age of the buildings. Actually, backing up, just to put that in perspective, the last school building that was complete, major project, was the high school renovation, which was completed 19 years ago. And on the municipal side, it's the public library, which was completed 10 years ago. Another way to look at this is just the average age of the buildings. And looking at the school projects, and when we look at the age of a building, we look at it since maybe the last major renovation. So, for example, the Barrows Elementary School was constructed in 1963, but it underwent a major renovation in 2005. So we consider that a 20-year-old building. So the average age of our school buildings is 29 years old. The municipal buildings is 35 years old. So when you consider the option, sort of the do-nothing option, kick this down the road for just 5 years, we'll be looking at 15 buildings with an average age somewhere around 37, 38 years on average. What we'll be doing is stacking up building projects for future taxpayers. Back in the 2000s, we did a lot of school projects. We took on some debt. That debt's fallen off. And it's kind of time to re-up. And we, as a building committee, we firmly believe that we need to be addressing both the school projects as well as the municipal buildings in town. So lastly, I just want to finish up reiterating that as a building committee, we fully support both projects. Our goals for these projects are going to be to complete the highest quality, sustainable buildings on time and under budget. And I want to emphasize the under budget. We have appropriate budgets, adequate budgets for these projects. We have fair contingencies for these projects. If we have favorable market conditions going forward and we're able to save money on these projects, we will return the money to the town. We're not going to spend money because we have it. On the other hand, if we sense project overruns, and we will be doing estimatings through the design, our consultants will be doing multiple estimates. If we start to run up against cost overruns, we are committed as a committee and as a group across the board to rescope and value engineer these projects. So without question, we will not be coming back to the town looking for additional funding on these projects. That's our goal and more our commitment on these projects. Thank you all. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Killam team to talk about that project.
Good evening, everyone. Tom Miller, here in Reading. I'm joined by many members of our team who you'll be hearing from in our brief presentation tonight, but I wanted just to introduce two members who are not going to be part of the presentation, but will be here for Q&A. Mike Carroll, who are OPM, and Jenny Katiamaki with our Architect LBA. So excited to have them as on part of our team as well. So you can go next slide. In this presentation, again, about 20 minutes, our goal is to provide a brief overview of the entirety of the project. One, why the need for a new school? What's the benefit for a couple of different constituencies, both within the community and within the Reading Public Schools? What is the MSBA process? How much is it going to cost? And then what happens if the vote does not pass? So first, why the need for a new school? Not a new slide on that one. Renovate. So a couple of things. We bucket the need for a new school in two categories. One, around the physical plant needs and some of the building deficiencies, and then also in what we say is some of the programmatic needs and deficiencies. We're going to talk a little bit about each of those, but I wanted to make 2 points before I go into detail on those. One, as Pat recently shared, the building was constructed in 1969, and since then there has been no major renovations. I would like to thank our facilities team who have done a tremendous job not only upkeeping the building, but being really creative and maximizing the spaces that we have to be able to live out the building out to its useful life. Secondly, as you may know, as part of this the MSBA process, we have to explore the possibility of a renovation instead of a rebuild. We'll dive a little bit deeper as we talk about that tonight, but in short, achieving mere code compliance with the building through a renovation would cost upwards of $60 million as well. So an option that we did look at deeply, but again, that price tag was pretty hefty for just achieving code compliance. Go next slide. At this point, kind of going back to the two buckets, physical plant and programmatic, I'm going to have Joe Huggins speak briefly about some of the physical plant deficiencies in the building.
I'm Joe Huggins, Director of Facilities for the Town of Reading. And like Tom had mentioned, the building is at the end of its useful life, and we do have issues there. One of them is the lead in the drinking water on the solder joints. ADA compliance is a big issue in all the spaces at the Killam. Some classrooms require access to them by moving through another space, which is not good programmatically. Our electrical system is maxed out in the building, and there's not a lot of opportunities for adding on to it due to the age of the system over there. It's also not a fully sprinkled building. We do have an updated fire alarm, but it's not a fully sprinkled building. The Killam does need to have a large-scale window and door replacement project done, and that goes for 95% of the building. And we do have water infiltration issues around the foundation that do cause issues. And just from a safety standpoint, a lot of the new schools are built quite differently, where you have good sight lines for people coming in and out of the facility. We do not have that at Killam. So that's like a safety feature that would be added during the construction of a new building.
On the programmatic side, there's a couple of challenges, significant challenges in the current building that inhibit our ability to be able to meet the needs of some of our students. One being the lack of appropriate spaces for us to deliver small group instruction, whether that's for our students with disabilities, our multilingual learners, or students just needing additional support. The facilities team has tried to convert some spaces creatively, but there's some spaces for small group learning, as an example, that take place in passing areas, which is not what we want for our students. Second, there are, as Joe said, some classrooms where you have to pass through one classroom into another to get to another classroom. You can imagine with kindergarten learners how exciting it is to see their class pass through multiple times a day and have the challenges that can pose. The Library Media Center is right in the middle of the building, is used as a corridor. And it's kind of an open crossroad space, which is challenging to then use that as an instructional space. There are closets that are used for instructional and meeting spaces, and then also common spaces, hallways or storage or stage areas are used for storage. Again, you can kind of imagine the challenges that poses in terms of just an educational model for students. And then something that's becoming an increasing challenge for us day by day is just the limited data connections in classrooms to, which constricts our use of instructional technology, which, again, using more IT by the day is just becoming a bigger challenge for us as well. I think the community is aware sort of the benefit, in terms of property value for the community of a brand new school. But I wanted to focus on what's the benefits within the Reading Public School community for us. So if you go next slide, 4 buckets of constituencies that we feel would really benefit from the new school, and I'll walk through those one at a time. One, obviously, the Killam community, but also the Rise community, the high school community, and then our larger district as well. So impact on Killam Elementary community, again, the obvious one, this is a building that will serve our students at the Killam Elementary School. We believe that the providing learning spaces that are state-of-the-art learning spaces will allow us to meet the educational needs of our students in a much better way than what we are doing in the current facility. I think that's the given. 2 other things on that, you go next slide, just in that building we'd like to flag that are, of interest to the community. One being a new and improved outdoor space, which we know would be used extensively by the community, and a gymnasium that would have bleacher space for those of you with students or children in the younger youth sport age. We know that that's a space that right now there is no bleacher space area on any spot outside of the high school gymnasium. That's the obvious one, but there's a couple other constituencies within the Reading Public Schools that would really value from having a new space as well. One, Rise Preschool. So as you likely know, the design has Rise Preschool moving under one roof at Killam Elementary. Currently, Rise is split across 3 sites, Killam, the high school, and Wood End. We are thrilled that MSBA will be participating in reimbursement for those pre-K classrooms. Typically, MSBA does not participate in reimbursement of pre-K spaces, but given what we put in our statement of interest and also it serving a high population of students with disabilities, it is something that we are really excited that MSBA will be participating in as well. Next slide. You can imagine the challenge of running a school essentially across 3 sites. Some areas where we have limitations right now, running a school across 3 sites are streamlining administration, consistent curriculum implementation, providing access to support services, which again, with about 50% of our students on IEPs, there is a lot of service providers in and around the building, and then just building what is important, especially at that age, is a sense of community. A point I need to make and emphasize on this is that for those of you who are educators in the room, know that this is not babysitting. This is not childcare. You could make an argument, and many will, that these are actually the most formative years in a child's educational experience. So investing in our 3, 4, 5-year-olds is potentially, and I would argue, the best investment we can make in our students in investing in them young, particularly so many of our students with disabilities who are our most vulnerable population. So this is a community that is really important that we provide the best educational experience. Next slide. The other community that we think would benefit is just our district at large. We have had a slight drop in enrollment over the last couple of years, which was anticipated if you look back both either at census data or what was predicted by a recent demographic study. It is also predicting an uptick over the next couple of years in student enrollment, and that continuing on over the next decade. If you're interested, that's published on our website as well. In order to absorb what we think is going to be an increase in the student enrollment, freeing up some of the space that's currently occupied by Rise will allow us to meet the increase in school and population without having to add additional modular classrooms, without having to create any new spaces in our buildings, which we know there will be significant challenges in doing that. We think that it is smart of us to right now get ahead of that, knowing what is predicted to come in the next couple of years. We also know that we are navigating a significant increase in needs of our students, more complex special needs, more students coming in with academic needs. So having spaces that allow us to meet what's required by law for their needs, but also to best service them is important. And again, opening up some of those spaces that are currently used by Rise students would allow us to do that. And then the last group that I'll speak about tonight in terms of a benefit is for our high school. As you may know, the majority of our Rise classrooms are currently in the basement of the high school. So moving Rise under one roof would open up that space at the high school. If you've been following along with the high school, what the high school is trying to do aligns to trends in the ed sector right now, which is making the high school experience more meaningful for our students, providing them with more hands-on opportunities, providing them with opportunities that align with high-need jobs, providing them with opportunities that are engaging for them. As a result, the high school has recently launched 5 innovation pathways, which allows them to extend their studies in areas of computer science, engineering, digital media, clean energy, and healthcare and social assistance. Opening up this space would also allow us to put in what are the corresponding lab spaces for these programs, including a robotics and computer science lab, a engineering lab, which would merge CAD with traditional hands-on construction, and to further what is some of our hands-on vocational learning opportunities as well. So in short, on this, we feel there is both a significant programmatic and facilities need for a new building, and we believe that the new building will not only support students in the Killam community, but also one that will support students across our district as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Carla, who's going to dive into the site.
Good evening, and thank you for coming out this evening. My name is Carla Nazzaro. I am the chair of the Killam School Building Committee. I'm the lucky one that gets to show you the nice pictures and renderings that our designers done for us. So here is a site plan, our proposed site plan. You can see by the intermittent gray outline of the building in the center of the site, that's our existing building. The proposed 3-story school, 2- and 3-story school in different spaces, is closer to the Haverhill Street side of the site. We've done a lot of work so far with traffic studies and impacts to the community, and we feel really good about this plan because we will have, for drop-off and pickup, we will be bringing cars onto the site to get them off of the streets. But we have a comprehensive plan for parking on and off the site and impacts to our neighborhoods. We'll just quickly go through these. These are neighborhood views. This is from the west side. This is a front view of the school. And I should say that these are views, these are not the pictures or the buildings we will build. This is an example of one of them. We will work through the outside design of the buildings and picking materials and things like that. So this could be a main entry view. This is the view from Charles Street, also the front of the school, and you'll see the soccer fields in the front and some of the play spaces in the front as well. And this is the back of the school from the Haverhill side of the street. We have a rendering of the inside of the school, something that was really important to our educators and how they roll out their educational plan is to have classroom neighborhoods. So the MSBA really prescribes sizing of different classrooms. What we've done is we've made our classrooms a little smaller and taken some of that space and put it outside into the hallway. So we have these neighborhood classrooms. So it's a different way for the teachers to offer a learning environment for our students. We're really, really excited about this piece of the design of the school. We have a combination cafeteria and auditorium, and this always going to have a lot of light and always have a lot of windows. This beautiful space is a potential for what our space would look like. The floor plans for all 3 floors. On the first floor, you can see the green classrooms. That is the Rise Preschool. As Dr. Milichewski had mentioned, the 12 classrooms, the MSBA is participating in that portion of the Rise Preschool, so we were thrilled about that. We have the cafeteria on the lower level. On the second level, when the kids move up the stairs, they get older. So, or I should say, as they get older, they move up the stairs. So for kindergarten, first and second grade, on the second level, along with the gymnasium. The gymnasium opens to a lot of natural light coming in from the third level. And then the big kids are on the top floor, so the third, fourth, and fifth. You can see in the center of the second floor, there's a media center in the second of that donut shape of classrooms. And the media center is something that was really important to the existing Killam community. It is their hub of connectedness. So we built that into the design because that was something that was very important to our educators. And the third, fourth, and fifth graders can access that space from their floor and go down into the media center as well. So that's a huge feature of our building that we're really excited about. And I'm sorry, we use a lot of acronyms. We use educational acronyms and construction acronyms. So I apologize for that. What is the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority? So the MSBA is a independent government authority, and it was created to help with capital improvement plans for towns and public schools specifically. They work with local communities. They're interested in sustainable and energy efficient buildings across the state. Their reimbursement provides, there is a predetermined percentage of eligibility costs, and we are assigned a certain percentage of reimbursement from the MSBA. Since 2004, $16.1 billion in payments have been made to towns and cities across the Commonwealth. And how do they get their funding? They get their funding from us, the taxpayers. So they get from our 6.25% sales tax, 1 cent of every dollar goes into this fund. So it is it's a very competitive process. You can see there were 58 statements of interest. Only 11 districts were chosen. We were really fortunate to be one of those districts to be chosen to get into this program. We are really appreciative of being in this program with the state. Thank you. The MSBA has a very prescribed process. They have probably one of the best processes out of all of the states. We, Pat had mentioned, we as a group have to make a big decision, and we're all coming from different, looking at things through different lenses, and we always seem to, at the end of the process, come to the same agreement. It may be a rough road, but we always get there. And it's always kind of comforting to know that we all get that process. So there are 8 different modules for the MSBA. We are currently we're moving into module 5. So right now we have submitted our schematic design, which our design is considered 30% complete at this moment. It goes to the MSBA. They are currently reviewing that. They need about a month and a half to review that. On April 30th, it is our hope that at their board meeting, they will approve our process. At that point in time, they will actually allocate the $44 million to our project. And then we as a district have a certain amount of time to say thank you to the MSBA and have a debt exclusion vote and show our process for how we're going to put up our portion of the funding. And then with this, if we have a successful vote, we'll move into more of a detailed design and construction documents. This is just a quick schedule. It's a good look at about where we're at. You can see we're right about where it's orange and it says approvals. So the MSBA on April 30th at their board meeting, we're looking forward to getting their approval for the project. I can tell you that up until this point, we have been funded with $2.2 million of the town's money that was allocated at town meeting. That took us up to until this point. I can tell you very proudly that we beat our schedule. we condensed our schedule, and we had a significant cost saving in this area. And this portion of our funding was also reimbursed with our percentage from the MSBA. So we will have the town vote on May 13th, along with recalc project as well. It will be 2 different questions on one ballot. And that will, but for the rest of the project, that debt exclusion vote, in our case, it will be about $85 million. But when you see the ballot, it will actually say the full construction cost, which is $130+ million. So don't get confused when you see that number. Pending a approval and voting, we will have the design and construction documents will be about a year's time. We will put it out for a bidder for a general contractor, and then our construction will last 2 years. At that point, the children will move from, they will be in the existing school for construction, move to the new school, and then when they're in the new school, we'll start with site demo, which will take about another year. And I will pass this over to Sean Brandt.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sean Brandt. I'm the other member of the school committee who's on the Killam School Building Committee as well. I want to take just a few minutes to talk about some of the things that we've done along the way throughout the process to gather community feedback to get to this really sort of thoughtful design I think we've landed at. Early on, we held educational visioning sessions to understand what it is that makes Killam special so that we can understand what we want to try to recreate and preserve in the new building, but also understand where we have chances to build on all the goodness that's going on at the school today. We held community meetings both early in the process and then again more recently across a number of topics, including thinking around how the site would be used, engaging with the neighborhood on the impact to traffic, as well as engaging with the broader community and understanding the town's goals for sustainability with this new building. You can see some photos here from some of our educational visioning sessions where the design team really sought to sort of uncover what it is that makes Killam Killam. I think the overarching finding was that despite the building's physical deficiencies, the community there is really a fantastic one where people like and care for one another and truly live by their core values. Killam's core values they call them their terrific values. It stands for trustworthy, respectful, responsible, fair, caring citizens. And we tried to sort of keep that mantra at the center of everything that we did as we went through this process. We also held a number of visits to some of the recently opened schools across the region. I think each of these opened within the last 2 to 3 years or so, to see things like how they were using their flex spaces in creative ways, what they were able to do with larger, more modern classroom spaces, and then as well as some of the programmatic and instructional options that are opened up to you when you have a new building. These are photos from some of our community engagement sessions that I mentioned before. And in a moment, I'm going to show you, I would say, the sort of summary of all the findings from those community engagement sessions. And I want to point to some of the examples of how the feedback has been reflected in the design. I won't read everything here because Carla only gave me 3 minutes, but I do want to highlight how just a few influenced the design. You saw in the floor plans, and Carla spoke to it, we ended up with these grade level classroom pods, which I think are going to be the envy of the district when this building comes online. In the community-centered category, in the second column there, the gym, as Carla alluded to, will be available, or I think Dr. Milichewski maybe alluded to, is going to be available as a community space. And we were very thoughtful about accessibility, about bathroom access, and other things that will really make that valuable to the community. We adjusted the field layouts after getting feedback that we wanted to make sure that the t-ball, softball, and sort of soccer field that's there is still available with the new design, and we don't take that out of the town's inventory from a rec perspective. And then we also have a really thoughtful HVAC approach that's going to reduce the cost to operate the building for decades to come. The traffic flow and on-site parking, as Carla alluded to, significant improvements to what we see in the Killam neighborhood today. And most importantly, the layout and the design are really just going to support and extend everything that makes Killam such a special place to learn. So I'll just close by thanking everyone who participated in any of these feedback sessions and provided their input, because it really got us to a much better place. Sharon, I think, is coming up next.
Hi, I'm Sharon Engstrom. I'm the town accountant and CFO for the town. Next slide, please. So the total project cost is $130,011,783. This is the amount that you'll find on the debt exclusion ballot. The MSBA has agreed to contribute $44,182,227. The difference of which is $85,829,556. Once we had these numbers, we reached out to our bonding agent looking to see what it would cost for the average taxpayer. And we asked for different terms, 15, 20, 25, 30. And we reviewed that data to try to be mindful of affordability, but also about how much interest we're going to pay on the project. We settled on 20 years. That's where we're leaning right now. And that is $80.50 per $100,000 of assessed value. We also have in our favor that we have some excluded debt that's falling off our rolls. So last year, we had 3 excluded debts, Reading Memorial High School and Wood End, which have been on the rolls for about 20 years. They were paid off in fiscal 24, and your tax bills that you got in fiscal 25 should have been probably going up slower than what you're used to because there would have been those excluded debts falling off. This year in fiscal 25, the library is being paid off, and that will be our last excluded debt, so there will be no other excluded debt. So for the Reading Memorial High School and Wood End, the savings is about $27.15 per $100,000 of home value, and the library is $16.31 per $100,000. So the average home in Reading is about $890,000. So for that average home, it would be a $716.45 increase for the Killam project, about $59.70 per month. And if you included the excluded debt would come out to a $386 reduction, or $386.80 reduction in tax. So the net of this project, if this was the only project, would be an increase of $329.65. So that's the last slide here. We have a tax calculator that we want to demonstrate for you so that you can see what the impact would be for your home. So this is on the town's website, and I believe there's links to this calculator on both the project websites to get you here. You can put in your assessed home value, so if we put in any value you want to put in. And then we click off the projects that we're looking to find out how much they're going to cost. If you click off both of them, it's going to give you the gross amount of how much those projects are going to cost. And it will also show you the debts that are falling off to show you a net impact. So you can see here the net impact of $890,000 was $594.70 if you could consider all the excluded debt that's fallen off. So we encourage everyone to look up their assessed value. You can even look it up from this calculator. There's a spot where you can put your address in if you're not quite sure what your assessed value is, and you can determine what's the impact on your tax bill. Another thing that I think is important to mention is that these projects are large and they're going to take a couple years to get built, and we wouldn't be borrowing all this money right off the cuff. And so you would see the impact of your tax bill be a very gradual one over the next 2 to 3 years, potentially 4 years. And so that makes it a little bit more affordable as well, because we'll borrow money as we need to, and it will come onto your tax bill more gradually. I'm going to turn it back to Carla.
So what happens if the vote fails? So this is the May 13th vote. We have the option to ask the MSBA for another shot. So what we would do is we would petition them. They would allow us to bring another debt exclusion vote to the town, and we would have to do that fairly quickly. At that point, we would not be allowed to change the design of the building, because the building design has already been approved by the MSBA, and that's the design we have a contract with them on. So what would happen? We would still have to occupy the Killam School with all of its limitations. The town would be responsible to pay for any repairs to systems as they fail. One of the options that the MSBA exercises they make you go through is they tell you to price out how much it would cost to bring the building up to code. For us, it's $61 million. So that is the cheapest option that we looked at. That's the existing school is half the size of the proposed new school. Why is it half the size? It is half the amount of space that the MSBA requires. That's why the 3-story building is the size that it is. We would have to find temporary learning space for the students during construction, and those repair costs would be paid for 100% by the town. We wouldn't have any programmatic or educational benefits from it. The 2.2, we could at some point in time go back to the MSBA and try and get into their program again. That $2.2 million that they originally contributed to us, they would not do that a second time. So we would be on the hook for that first portion of it again. Thank you.
Good evening, folks. My name is Mark Doxer. I am a member of the Select Board for another 6 days, and I have been very engaged in the Reading Center for Active Living project for the last 6 years as a community member. I'm also part of the Permanent Building Committee. I'm joined this evening by a number of town staff, volunteers, many of which who are going to speak, but also I want to highlight 2 people who won't be speaking, but they'll also be available for questions and answers afterward. So Joel Bargman, who is our architect from the firm BH+A, and Brian Ramadka from, I always get this wrong, TNH? I'm close. Okay, great. What I'd like to do is kind of introduce, we have a short video we want to play to give you a little bit of background on what's going on, and then we'll go through a very similar presentation in terms of talking about need and benefits in some more detail. So let's try the video first, please. Thanks, folks. So let me start off. Let's talk a little bit about the need in terms of, I'm sorry, do the overview first, then I'll go to the need. Very similar structure. We want to talk about the need for the facility, the benefits that are going to be delivered for the community. We'll talk a bit about design. Jane's going to take that over for me. We'll We'll talk about public input that's been in the process throughout. We'll talk about project cost. And then one of the questions that's probably on everyone's mind is we have the Pleasant Street Center. What are some options for what we might do with that afterward? So why do we need the ReCal facility? I'm going to give this to you from two perspectives. I'm going to give you kind of the user perspective, and then I'm going to ask Joe Huggins to join me to talk from the facilities perspective. Summarizing this just into a couple of words, the space doesn't support the needs of the 60-plus community sufficiently at this point. You can see images of things that are too small, overlapping things where we have waiting lists for programs that are running. We have a computer room that's located in the basement. We have complaints about odors. We have different issues taking place. But the bottom line is the facility isn't big enough. It doesn't allow us to do what needs to be done for the 60-plus community. Joe, can I ask you to join on the facility side?
Thank you, Mark. Like Mark was saying, this particular building is, a lot of systems are at the end of their useful life also. We do have some water infiltration issues at the senior center. The HVAC equipment is getting older and requiring more maintenance than we'd like to see. Space-wise, the building just doesn't work well for the programmatic needs that that they offer over there. ADA compliance, you know, the building does not have good approaches to the building for people to get in and out that are in need of that. And the other thing to keep in mind too is there's no bathrooms on the first floor. You need to get to the bathrooms by going down to the basement level. So it's at the end of its useful life, and the building, and again, last time it was renovated, I believe, was 1993 when it had its last major overhaul. It's been a fire station, a police station / town hall, and a senior center, and it's served us well.
I mentioned that I've been very engaged in this project for the last 6 years, but in fact, the history goes back even further than that. It's a good 10 years back when the town hired various groups to come in and assess how well were we meeting the needs, and it was found to be deficient even back then. We've hired a series of experts to come work with us at different points. They keep coming back with the same story. We don't have enough space to do the things that we need to do to serve the community appropriately. In 2021, so now 4 years ago, the select board formed a committee to take a look at this, all the different needs, what was going on, to better get a needs assessment, see what was going on, and come back and make recommendations to the select board and then the town. So here we are, we moved forward a few years. Using some of the ARPA funds, we were able to pay for an architect to come in to do a feasibility study, to assess the needs. And then we brought it forward through the town's building process, the permanent building committee getting much more involved. And essentially what's happened is all these groups have coalesced to come together in terms of what the building should be, that it should be located down at Simon's Way. Each of the groups that's been involved has been voting unanimously in favor of the activities, ranging from the Council on Aging, Permanent Building Committee, the ReCal Committee initially that came there, the Select Board as well, taking it forward. And then that brings us forward here to 2025, where we are. And bring it forward first to town meeting, which will take place as Matt outlined, and then to the voters on May 13th. So ReCalc really was meant to go out and benchmark what's happening with communities for ages 60 plus. And they issued a summary report and came out with a few things that I think are very important here. One is, this is a need, not a want. It's a need. The impact. So back in 2010, the population in Reading, the 60-plus population, was about 20% of the community. Then in 2020, it was 26%. 2024, almost 29%. Now it is 29% of the community. It's expected to grow to 30% or more by the year 2030. So major changes. It's a much larger community. The space, in order to serve people better, we need to be much more accessible and much more inclusive to meet the needs of various people here. One of the biggest things that stands out is we have a number of very popular programs, but there have to be waiting lists. What you may have seen in the last picture before was, I think, chair yoga, which had to extend out into the hallway. This is a regular occurrence. There just isn't enough space here. What's also very interesting is when we say age 60 plus, that's actually a span of, it turns out, 40 years for residents in this community. We're not able to reach this whole population due to lack of space, lack of flexibility in terms of recreation and other activities. Interestingly, almost half of that 60-plus population is in that 60 to 69 group. And one of the things that other communities that are also facing what we're talking about here is that when they build these centers for active living, they find a drastic increase in participation in the entire group, but in particular in the 60 to 69 group as well. So that's the need. Let's talk a little bit about the benefits. What are you going to get out of this facility? A focus on age 60 plus, but something for everybody. The focus here was to promote health, wellness, and community engagement, particularly for those age 60 and above. As mentioned in the video, it will replace the Pleasant Street Center in terms of taking care of senior center, but add new capabilities to the community. It's meant to be a very welcoming space that supports social interaction, recreational activities, and access to programs and services for individuals of all ages. And one of the things that's very important here, you'll see the images below, about different parts of the town, different aspects, different residents of the community. We have elder and human services, also veteran services, also recreation, all of whom would be housed in this facility and offering programs for these groups. There's quite a bit of overlap, as it turns out, in both veteran services and rec for the 60-plus community. We did a survey back in 2022 as part of these recalc activities, and there were 24 questions. We got 1,472 responses. I'm not going through all of the questions, but one of the questions that was asked was, what does the community want in this facility? And what came out very strongly is that, I call it the light blue, an all ages community center with dedicated space for age 60 plus. And you can see the demographics that made that up. But the largest segment said that that was what they wanted to see in this community, and that's what they were willing to support. The Surgeon General in 2023 came out with something that I think was very interesting. We've been talking about social connection. And this report talked about isolation and loneliness, which is a very significant problem in the senior community. COVID-19 really exacerbated this and made it much more difficult for all these things. What this report talks about is social connections and the impact that it has the downside of making the epidemic worse and it impacting not just individuals, but also communities. And that's one of the things we thought was very important, is this connection piece. They highlighted 6 pillars, the first of which was to design the built environment to promote social connection. That's exactly what ReCal is. They made some comparisons and said, what is this lack of social connection? How bad is it? Basically, they said it's as dangerous as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. And they compared it to things like drinking 6 alcoholic drinks daily, not having any physical activity, obesity, and air pollution. In fact, it's worse than all those. Just to kind of summarize, and then I'll pass it over to Jane. This has something for everyone. It's focused on the age 60 plus community. It features a senior hub space. You saw in the video, lounge, cafe area, card and game rooms, program rooms, and fitness room, all set up appropriately on the first floor. It has priority access for the 60 plus community to the other aspects of the facility. And by having a facility like this, we're able to leverage many more things into it. The age 18 plus, you have the opportunities for enrichment and sports through lots of programming and programmed activities. If you look at the school age, for middle school, for high school, organized after school or evening programming that we can do. They can help in socializing, recreation, and enrichment. For elementary, the opportunity for programs to be set up there. And even for infants and toddlers, part of it being parents, grandparents, having a place to take grandkids, their charges in terms of what's going on. And then last but not least, to all members of the community, access to the walking track and to the gym, drop-in times for gym use. I won't go through all of these, but the essence is that this becomes a community asset focused on the age 60 plus, but the opportunity for all community members to do a variety of different activities here, from renting out space to town events. Also, this building can serve as an emergency shelter. It features a kitchen, it features showers, it features an emergency generator. And last but not least on here, a possible additional voting location for the town of Reading. With that, I'm going to say thanks, and I'm going to pass it to Jane Wellman.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening. Thank you for coming this evening. I'm Jane Wellman, and I serve as your assistant town manager. It's been my pleasure to work closely with both projects over the past 2 years. Right now, I would like to talk briefly about how the design for the Reading Center for Active Living has been shaped by public input. We created a robust engagement program beginning with the Recalc Committee. Once the designer, BH+A, was hired in October 23, we went to great lengths to solicit public input into identifying the needs we have to serve our 60-plus residents. We also want to meet the needs of additional residents who regularly utilize our Recreation and Veterans Services divisions. Our project teams issued a survey early on, and Mark just discussed, that gave us the broad strokes to what the community may be interested in seeing for a senior and community center. We visited more than 15 other centers, both senior and centers for active living, where we learned about success stories, aha moments, and project regret. For those we didn't visit, we sent them questionnaires. We called them up and talked to them at length. And we learned a lot through this process. We learned about how important a gym is, and those communities that didn't build one always regretted it. We learned how critical a walking track can be to winter wellness in New England, and how important it is to ensure program spaces are properly sized and equipped. This project has been on topic at more than 60 public meetings, including Council on Aging, Select Board, the Recalc and Permanent Building Committee meetings, Finance, Conservation Commission, and Recreation. We've held more than 12 additional meetings with town staff and other community organizations and small groups. Through all of these meetings, elected and appointed officials have brought purpose, experience, expertise in a variety of related domains, scrutiny, and professionalism. We have 3 project working groups with members of the Council on Aging that have met weekly or bi-weekly since we moved through the schematic design phase of the process. And finally, we've held 12 public forums from 2024 to, well, today. The 12th will actually be on April 16, which is our fully online version of the same presentation. And we've invited the public to interact with the project, to tell us their ideas and give us feedback on the work thus far. Next. We have utilized every channel available to us to inform the community about the project, from press releases, our website, social media, suggestion boxes, creating the tax calculator, and more. Together with the community, the Recal project team has worked to incorporate the feedback from the visioning, the meetings, the forums, and the correspondence into the design. This public engagement led to spaces that are right-sized to serve Reading well into the future. Some CALs are bigger than this one. Some senior centers are much smaller than this one. This one, we believe, is exactly right. We will see space that will foster both physical and mental wellness by offering indoor fitness, walking and yoga, as well as outdoor spaces that are adjacent to our beautiful woods in that area. We'll have spaces that host activities to promote mental stimulation, including games, billiards, crafts, makerspace, and promote lifelong learning. Through the lounge, the cafe, and a variety of casual gathering spaces, we support socialization so our clients can gather, relax, and come together to create new friendships, along with a large multi-purpose space that will end long lists that you've heard about this evening for large gatherings, celebrations, while also offering rental opportunities. By taking a community-centric approach with a 60-plus focus, we will be able to expand our program offerings, offering much more than we do now to a broader group over more hours in the day. And finally, new space thoughtfully designed will preserve privacy and dignity for health, social, and financial services that we provide. And perhaps most importantly, the new building goes well beyond minimum ADA guidelines to offer a truly inclusive building that meets the needs of all residents and all abilities. I now invite Jenna Wood to come up and take us through the design. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jenna Wood. I'm the Community Services Director for the Town of Reading. I've been here for 13 years, and it's been a great 13 years. I'm so passionate about this community. Seeing this video play at the beginning, I was like almost in tears. And that's coming from a completely genuine place. And I know that my team feels the same way. They love working here. They're all very passionate. They care about the community. And we're so proud of all of the work that the boards, all the volunteers, town manager, the assistant town manager, all the other communities that have helped us with our design, and the consultants. We're just so happy to see this come to fruition. And I get to present a little bit about the design tonight. And sorry if a lot of this comes across as a little repetitive from the video and what other people have said. So first and foremost, here is the front-facing view of the building. So at the current Pleasant Street Center, there is a lack of parking and accessibility issues that Joe touched upon. For our larger events, the parking lot is completely filled, and both sides of the street are also filled with parking outside of the front of the building. If you are there for a large event and there's parking on both sides of the street, it's relatively impossible to fit 2 cars down the side of the street. And not fun fact, kind of an unfortunate thing that happened to me 2 months ago was that I was parked right out in front and my car mirror got smashed. So there's tremendous issues with parking and accessibility at the current building. And what's great about this design and thoughtful about this design is that we'll have fully accessible parking areas. It'll feature about 90 parking spots for the 60 plus population and the community at large. There'll be a designated area in front to accommodate drop-offs for family members and our existing town transportation vehicles. This will ensure that folks are safe when they're going in and out of our building, and they have a safe place to wait in inclement weather conditions. Another great thing about the outside of this building that our current center doesn't have is outdoor opportunities. So around this building, there'll be a walking trail, there'll be an outdoor recreation area off the side of the gymnasium, and we'll also have a patio. There is a small patio at the existing center too as well, but this patio looks like it might be a little bit nicer. Also, another great thing about this design that's been successful in other communities that we wanted to put into this building is the overall design of the building is flexible with the shared community spaces like the gym and the multi-purpose room. So the gym and the multi-purpose room are on the right side of the building. Oh, we moved past, that's okay. But it's all good. They're on the right side of the building. So what's really great about that is that there's capability to enter into a side door to access either of these spaces for evening programs and or rentals while limiting access to portions of other designated program spaces inside of the building. And then you can move on. So here you'll see some of the designated senior spaces that Mark and Jane just kind of spoke about. The current center doesn't have space to accommodate any type of informal gathering for our 60 plus community. So they don't have opportunities to socialize in outside of their scheduled programs. So if they finish up Zumba, they can't sit and have a coffee, or they can't talk because Chris and his team are constantly turning over the room for the next event, and it's just nearly impossible for them to have any socialization time. So in this new space, this is something that was a big priority of the 60 plus population and something that the Council on Aging was really, really adamant about having, is a social space with a senior lounge and a coffee bar area so that people can come and enjoy those informal gatherings and can come before and after their scheduled programs and just hang out. They can drop into the spaces, they can work, they could watch TV, they could read a book anytime during the center hours. So in this slide, you can see on the left-hand side our current multi-purpose room. And then on the right side, you can see the new vision for the multi-purpose room. Our current multi-purpose room is used for any event that I would say that has over 15 to 20 people. So that's a lot of programming in that one room that constantly gets turned over by, again, Chris and his team. So the current center can only comfortably accommodate about 60 people in that great room. And it's still difficult to get around in that space if you have a walker or a wheelchair, or even if you're just serving as a volunteer or a staff member to members of the public, to move around that space you can see in that picture, it's very difficult to do. So we have wait lists for a majority of these large programs, and this new multipurpose room will really help us to accommodate the needs that we have. So Joe also touched on the fact that there's no bathrooms on the first floor. So this room is on the first floor and houses a lot of our bigger events. So our 60 plus community will have to go upstairs or downstairs using the elevator, of course, as well as an option to get to the bathrooms. So this new Cal Center will have that designated multi-purpose room with a commercial kitchen. It can accommodate now up to 120 people, which is doubling what we can currently serve right now. It'll have the accessible bathrooms available right outside of the rooms, and there'll be also bathrooms upstairs, of course. The Cal Center kitchen will allow us to host cooking classes, expand our meal programming offerings by having capabilities to cook and prepare meals. The community will have access to rent the space for events like baby showers, graduations, banquets, certain catering events. People can come in from the outside and have their events catered if space allows. ReCal will offer a variety of designated programming rooms that don't exist at the current center. Right now, there's 3 rooms that are constantly turned over, one being the multipurpose room and the 2 rooms that are upstairs. There is 3 rooms upstairs, but half of the room is office space, so we don't really use that as programming space. So just having those 3 rooms constantly turned over limits the amount that we can actually offer and the diversity of programming that we can actually offer. So the new ReCal programming rooms will include rooms like you saw in the video, a game room for cards, puzzling, board games, a makerspace for engineering, woodworking, and tech programs, a fitness equipment room with treadmills, bikes, and weight, exercise rooms for Zumba, an arts and crafts room, and a flex room for smaller programs and lectures. ReCal will also feature a gymnasium and a walking track. There's currently no public access for our 60 plus community and other residents to participate in indoor active recreational opportunities during the day. In our visits to other centers, we've asked what would you do different in your building? Many said they wish that they had a gym to offer more active programs to the 60 plus population. And in our visits and conversations surrounding communities that have the gym and the walking track, they've highlighted this as the epicenter of social connection for the entire building, and that they have never seen more relationships developed in any other space than on the walking track and in the gymnasium. And I thought that was pretty powerful. Here you'll see an aerial site view. This is a great community resource area that features a baseball field, a multi-purpose field already. It's used by a variety of youth organizations and the high school. You will see the Burbank Ice Arena. It houses several of our youth programs as well, high school programs, and we have recreation programs in there that we run in conjunction with North Shore Skating Club. Around the ReCal, I talked about this a little earlier, there's a walking trail that leads to conservation areas. This is included in the project cost and has been a collaborative effort with various staff members and committees. Lastly, you'll see pickleball courts on here. They are part of a separate project, but a defined need within the community and looked at as a high priority during the ReCal project for an active outdoor recreational opportunity, given the fact that many residents who play the sport are 60 plus, and what a great marriage that would be to have the pickleball courts and the ReCal Center all together. Pretty amazing area this could be for all members of our community, and especially our 60 plus. So next slide. Many of us visited and chatted with multiple centers to gain valuable input. Personally, I visited over 10, and I'm sure a lot of people up here can say the same. It was very interesting to go around and learn so much from all these different communities. The communities that we have listed here all have the same hybrid building model as the ReCal Center has. And these centers have noted a dramatic increase in participation. And most recently, Sandwich gave us data that the increase that they've seen in their participation is a 300% increase opening their building in 2020. That's insane. And I highly encourage you to visit the RECAL website to view testimonials and relevant videos that we have up on our FAQ section. It does show more detail of how these buildings operate and all of their success stories. And that's it for me, and I hand it to Sharon for the project cost again.
Thank you, Jenna. So the project cost for the RECAL Center is $27.9 million. This is the amount that will appear on the ballot question for the debt exclusion, and that is inclusive of all project costs and contingencies. We selected a 15-year term for this project, which came to $29.78 per $100,000 of assessed home value. Again, we referenced that same, the excluded debts falling off for Reading Memorial High School, Wood End, and the library, which are all of the excluded debts we've had. So again, the average home is $890,000. So the added tax burden would be $265.04 for this project, or $22.08 per month. If you subtract the recent debt exclusions, if this was the only project, it would be a net decrease in debt exclusion tax impact of $121.76. This slide is meant to bring it all together and give you a feel for what it costs for both projects. So we saw that $80.50 per 100,000 is the impact of the Killam project, and the RECAL $29.78 rounded up here to $29.8. And if you were to look at all the retiring debt, the impact is $43.50 per $100,000 of assessed value. If you were to take the two projects, add them together, and subtract out the retiring debt impact, you would get a combined impact of $66.8 per $100,000 of value. So you could do this calculation yourself if you know your value. So the examples below give you an example of a $600,000 home. So you would take the 66.8 and multiply it by 6, and you would get about $400 impact. $800,000 home, you would do the same exercise, would be $534. And $1 million home, $669. Now those would be your net impact. That's in consideration of all of the excluded debt that is falling away. And as I mentioned before, we have intent to borrow as we need the money. So this will come onto your tax bill in a more gradual way. There's some estimates on the bottom. So if we were to borrow 25% of the money this year, an $800,000 home would see a $134 increase to the tax bill. And so we would hope that fully you would see this on your tax bill by 2029, the full impact. But that gradual nature of it coming onto your tax bill will make it a little bit more affordable for most. Again, we would like to point people to our tax calculator to help them figure out the impact for their home. There are some tax assistance programs that you can get at the assessor's office. If you qualify, there are some assistance programs available. And the website for our tax calculator is noted here, but it is on our website. I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. I just have a few wrap-up slides here, and then we'll get to your questions and answers. So the question comes up a lot, what are we going to do with the current Pleasant Street Center? And you've heard the history there going back 150 years. I have some quick facts about the Pleasant Street Center that are up on the screen behind me. The square footage, we do have it assessed at 869,000. We think that's fairly low. So we've ordered a commercial appraisal to be done, and I will have that appraisal done before town meeting. So people will have that before town meeting vote to see how much the property is really worth. And that will be telling as to what we do with it. It's also in the multifamily zoning. However, the square footage is a little short for multifamily property. It's also on the, not surprisingly, on the Massachusetts Historic Registry. So it's a historic building that may limit what you can do, especially to the facade of the building. So we're looking at different things to do with the Pleasant Street Center for new life for the center. We could keep it for a town use. There's plenty of town uses that we have that we could fulfill the need there. We can lease it to a for-profit or a nonprofit business. We can sell the property outright, and that's why the appraisal that we're having done this month is going to be key. And there's also a provision where we could gift it to the Housing Authority for housing. So if you look at some of the proposed uses that we have on the screen behind me, for if we were decide to rent it out or even sell it, could be a coffee shop in that area, could be a grocer, food pantry, restaurant. You know, really the sky's the limit. Everything's on the table. We think if we did lease it out at the square footage, it would probably bring in anywhere from $85,000 to $100,000 a year, which is good revenue. We could keep it for a town use. That's on the screen behind me as well. There could be meeting, event space, you know, overflow there. Office space, we're always running short on office space. Educational space, storage, and the like. So we have some examples here of some nonprofit uses that have worked in similar buildings. One is the Inspire Cafe right in Wakefield next door to us. Another one is the Breaking Grounds Cafe. That's in Peabody, and that would be something of a nonprofit use for us. We do have some examples that we found of other old fire stations that were converted into other uses. You look on the screen behind me, especially the screen showing the Natick Center for the Arts, looks a lot like our Pleasant Street Center to me. And that is a performance venue. You can lease to a nonprofit, the town could hold it and run nonprofit activities there, or it could be a for-profit business as well. You know, the sky's the limit. So regarding those two properties, there's one also in Newburyport that's similar, again, an old fire station. Now there's theater, music, gallery space, educational space. So again, the sky's the limit. We do want to generate as much revenue as possible from the current Pleasant Street Center. That's to mitigate what we're paying for the new recalc. So that's one of the top priorities as well, to see how much we can generate as we move. And with that, I'd like to thank both teams that were here tonight for the presentations. I think we stayed pretty much on time, which is great. We can move to questions and answers for the panel up here. So we have a microphone at each end of the room. If you want to just go up to the microphone, form a line if there's a line, and ask your questions, we will answer them as best as possible right from the podium. So I can open it up for questions. Thank you for your patience during the presentation.
Peter, Precinct 7. A question on Killam School. The module classrooms that are being relocated, can you give me some detail on that?
Joe Huggins will speak to that, sir.
Thank you. So April 28th, I believe, is the date that the bid package is going out for the modular classrooms to be relocated here to the Reading Memorial High School. We're not going to be able to do anything until the vote goes through on May 13th, so we wouldn't be able to make an award because it's subject to funding. The work on the site here at the Reading Memorial High School, which is on the Rise Preschool parking lot to the left of that, will happen while school's going on. We'll have a safe area set up out there, and we'll get the laydown area ready. And then once school is out at the end of June, we're planning on having the contractor disassemble the modulars and move them over to their new home. And we anticipate that work being done before, obviously, the start of the school year.
So from the school department, the use, I'm unclear what the use is.
So as the community may know, there are currently modular classrooms out on the Killam site, which currently pose significant challenges during construction to be able to have those on site. So working with the OPM, we've had to identify a new location for the modular classrooms, significant costs in moving the modulars and installing the modulars, So we want to be able to move them once and move them to what we think could be a permanent location. The modulars, I would argue, are still in really good condition. If you've been in the modulars, air-conditioned spaces are still places that we want to continue to have available to our students and our community as well. So the goal was to be able to move them once and move them to a space that made sense in the short term and in the long term. Short term, if we move them over to Reading Memorial High School, it would allow us near the current location of RISE. It will allow us to move the students who currently are in the modular classrooms at Killam, which is currently a kindergarten classroom, move the kindergarten students inside the Killam building, and then move the students who are the Killam RISE students over to the modular classrooms to be near the current RISE programming. That would essentially make 2 sites for RISE, condensing down from having from Wood End, Killam, and RMHS to having it just to RMHS and to Wood End. After the Killam project would go through, students at both of those sites, internally in the basement here and the modular classrooms, would then move over to the new Killam building. That would then leave the vacated space in the modular classrooms here at the high school, which could be used for a couple of different things. One could be an extension of what we've identified as our Innovation Pathway program. 2 could be an extension of some of our programming, which right now are struggling to fit in buildings. For example, our extended day programming, which are still trying to find what is a serviceable permanent home, or could be for continued need for additional office spaces or classroom. So sort of in short, the argument is move them somewhere where short-term works, which moving them in kind of all together, having RISE at one site, 2 sites, and also ensuring it's in a space that long-term makes sense, because it'll now kind of meet long-term needs for the high school as
Well, if I understand correctly, they become permanent structures?
we would plan to use them for as long as they're livable life. So I would say in conversations with our facilities team, I would say once they're moved on site, we don't see any reason why they will not be able to be there at least 10, 15 years, be able to use that fair.
So I guess what we'll have to hear from is CPDC, Conservation Commission, Recreation Department, and probably others. So the initial question would be, how does this play into the master plan for the Birch Meadow area?
Good question. I can say that I have already had extensive conversations with Joe Huggins and with Ryan Percival, town engineer, to work through kind of making sure that both projects are on not only that the timelines match up, but that the scope of work doesn't interfere with one another, and also that in the way that the project moves forward, that we are in compliance with all of the requirements. In conversation today with Ryan, he felt that we are meeting sort of all code compliance in sort of what is happening in the Birch Meadow area. Joe, I don't know if there's anything else that's of interest in sort of merging of the product.
So the Birch Meadow project is it's fully designed right now. Come on over, Jenna. You've been involved in this forever. And it's going to bid in July. So it'll go to bid in July. We'll expect the bids back late July. The contract will be awarded in August, and we're off.
So I think what happens is this project conflicts with that project, and they build simultaneously, and they impact one another from a construction standpoint. At any rate, not to labor it, CPDC, conservation, engineering, all of those folks have to have a conversation with the public in order to assess accepting that project.
Yeah, particularly the
we'll
conservation portion, it'll go through the conservation process.
So we'll leave it at that. If my memory serves me, that when this high school was renovated, part of the agreement was that no structures would be built in addition to this building on this property. You can have council check that, but I think that was the understanding.
Okay.
Well, that's an issue, right? The other issue that I recall is that from a drainage perspective, Conservation Commission, we had an issue with this adding non-pervious construction into this area and the system ability to service it. So conservation can respond to that. But I think those are things we need to do in order to move forward with the modulars at that location.
We agree.
So that's my point.
You're right. All of these projects go through a public process, and as it goes forward, it'll have to hit all the applicable committees. It's already in the process for the Conservation Commission.
Okay, well, thank you all for your time, your energy, and your service to the town. Always a pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank you
Mr. Sweeter.
We have any other questions?
Hi, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I was wondering for the Killam School, I think the number was $61 million. Was that the final number?
No, you're talking about the total number or the cost to the town? Was
Cost of the town.
85 million.
Oh, 85 million? Oh,
Right, with the
for the
total number of
renovation
130.
was 61 million. Just to renovate, not to rebuild.
Oh, just to renovate.
Right, so then you mentioned, well, if you're renovating, we'd have to relocate the student. Has there been any cost determined for that to kind of have people look at saying renovation plus this extra versus building brand new?
The MSBA requires that you do a code upgrade with a addition, and then a new plan. So we've done all of those, and we came up with our best option is a new plan.
Right.
The $61 million option is a potential option if the vote fails. So as a town, we'll have to decide what we want to do. If our option is a renovation, we have a lot of work to do. We have to figure out the $61 million in a few years will be higher, and then we'll have to determine where to put the students and how much that will cost.
Right, so I was wondering if you have an estimate of where to put the students and how much that would cost, because if people in town could say, well, renovation with 61 million plus this extra cost, and we'll still be running behind the clock because we don't have a brand new building, if it would be beneficial to put that extra number in your numbers there.
Great question, Jenny, the architect. So we included in that renovation option 2 additional modular classrooms to be located on that site for the duration of the renovation. Typically, when you do a renovation, it takes a longer. So let's say 3 years, and you kind of go through the building, like, you know, conceptually, let's say 2 classrooms at a time. So those kids move out to the modular and you renovate those 2 rooms, and you kind of go through the building piece by piece like that. So we did include that cost in the $61 million estimate.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Is it on now? Okay. Mary Ann Downing, Precinct 4, and member of the Finance Committee, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the Finance Committee. But I'm speaking to a topic that has come up at almost, every Finance Committee meeting and is somewhat related to the projects. I think both of these projects are great. I think we have to do something definitely about the Killam School, and we have to provide something for our seniors. But as I look at, the optimistic number of, well, it's $600 on the average house, which, may be a lot for some of the very seniors we're looking to keep. I'm concerned about beyond the next couple of years, because we know we're going to be running a deficit in our budget. And the last time we had an override in 2018, which has lasted much longer than I think we expected. Please, someone in this room correct me if my recollection's wrong, but I think we said it was going to be $500 on the average house. So if we tried to just even have that much of an override now, and the average house is worth a lot more, we look at these numbers, but then in a couple of years, we're going to be probably maybe by 2028, we're going to be looking, I would think, to ask the voters for at least that much more money, if not more. I mean, I'm looking at what we're supplementing the budget with from free cash right now. It's going to be $6 million for FY26. And at that level, we're going to be, hitting a deficit in a couple of years. The last time our town took on a big capital project with the library, and we had to have a couple of rounds with that because of the construction costs. But the first time we attempted an override, the second debt exclusion vote for the library was in 2014. The first attempt at an override in 2016. It failed for a number of reasons, but a lot of people in particular, I believe, raised the concern, hey, 2 years ago, you came to us with a debt exclusion for this big project, and you knew the override was coming. We know the override is coming. Okay, maybe it's not going to be this year or next year. It will be before 2030. And I don't know what it will be. I can't even speculate. I'm just thinking of what the numbers were before. A humongous override just failed last night in Stoneham. I don't think we would be seeking those kind of numbers. But that override was going to seek to raise Stoneham average taxes by about $1,700. And even if we sought half of that here, that's a lot of money when combined with this. And I just hope if any taxpayers are watching, we have to think about what we're taking on here and when we have to take things on. And again, it's not disparage the merits of either project. And I know, especially with Killam, I mean, the school could be condemned in a year and then would be really screwed. It sounds like it's in bad shape. But the residents of Reading need to know that a big ask is going to be coming in a few years. Thank you.
Hi, yes, my name is Margot Denoy. I'm in Precinct 1. I was interested, actually, based on what this young lady was just saying, how do we feel that the tariffs, and talking to some people in the construction industry, it appears that everybody's anticipating that tariffs are going to increase construction costs and all of that. Was any thought, is that kind of part of all of the planning for this over the next 10 years or so? I'm sure it is. It just came up.
Yeah, so both projects contain multiple levels of contingency. We believe the contingencies are appropriate. We will be going through somewhat of a volatile time period, but I would say not specifically tariffs included, but we feel comfortable with the budget and the contingencies that we have, even with the current market with tariffs.
Yeah, I would just agree with that. We have taken those things into consideration. We've also looked at what past impacts were for tariffs that were put into effect a number of years ago and how that in fact impacted the construction price. So we've factored all those calculations into the current costs, and we believe that we can manage it within the budget. It's not a simple thing. I won't kid you on that, but we do this on multiple projects. It's procedurally going through, making sure that we're controlling the cost every step of the way.
Great. Okay, thank you. Also, another quick question on the recalc. It was mentioned a couple of times that in the slides that I guess Simon's Way is where the ice arena is, Burbank Ice Arena, that was identified as the best location for it. And I was wondering, why wouldn't we want it closer to the center of town? Everybody's looking at possible uses for the Eastern Gateway location, and it is very centrally located. Everything is already there in terms of having, I would imagine, access to water, sewer, etc. A lot of it is paved. Why would that not be considered a good location for a building this size, fairly large?
Thanks for the question, Margot. So we went through quite a process trying to identify all of the possible sites in Reading that we could look at. And as you know, there aren't a whole lot that could handle something of this size. We also tried to look at properties that we either owned or could strongly influence. And there are some sites that may seem to have the right size, but the folks that own them aren't really interested in working that way. You may remember that 3 years ago, we looked at what was the Walgreens downtown that's now the Dollar Store. And that would give us downtown access, a building that already existed, to see if that might be an opportunity. And we took that quite far, but in the end, couldn't make that one happen. In the end, we narrowed it down to 3 strong potential sites. One was stay at the Pleasant Street Center and see how we could expand that. The second was to look at Oakland Road, basically across from here, just kind of over there behind us. And the third was Simon's Way, or actually, it's actually Range Road is where it is, but Simon's Way is kind of where the ice arena is. And those were thoroughly vetted by, in fact, all the different committees went through in a ranking process to look at what's most important, what do you get, what do you lose, went through from the perspective of engineering, from town assets, all the different things, put it together. And in the end, all the different groups came to the same conclusion, which was that Simon's Way was the best site available to us.
And then how much of the land, the actual conservation or the area, the forested area, is going to have to be taken down in order to build the building, or is it primarily going to be, one is going to be able to build it where the parking area is or where field is? Are they going to remove the field, the soccer field, or?
So all of the work, and then I'm going to pass it to someone who maybe can talk about the footprint, but all the work we're talking about is on the side right now that's not developed. So it's not the soccer fields or other areas there. It's basically on the opposite side of the ice arena. I see Joel approaching and good time.
Are you concerned where the building is in the footprint of that entire parcel?
Yes, I'm somewhat concerned in terms of how much area it's taking up and how much, green space would have to be cut down in order to be able to make room for it.
Well, the area that's in the front is the area that sort of been previously disturbed by construction debris and other storage of this piece. So the concept was to use the front along Range Road as the site for the parking lot, the potential future pickleball that's not part of the ReCal project, and the ReCal building. So it's that first 150 feet back from Range Road that's being impacted, and that is the area that's previously disturbed. There's a line that goes through the site, the gray line. From that point back, that's conservation land that's over, that's many acres of land that's undisturbed and untouched. The idea was to touch the land that was previously touched and maintain as small an area that's impacted as possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just want to add as well that Joel was in a meeting already with a bunch of our team members as well with the Conservation Committee. And we have already discussed forms of mitigation, which you'll see one of those is on the existing plan with the walking path. So Conservation is on board with this project as is right now, but we'll have to go through the next step when it's approved to get the appropriate permits and resurvey and things like that. But they are on board with the initial concept, and we have had a public meeting with them.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again for your time.
Melissa Murphy, Precinct 8, board member. Just a clarifying question. Is the debt exclusion ballot the same as the ballot that the residents?
The debt exclusion ballot is the ballot question, yes.
Okay, so I asked you this a little while ago.
Right.
What we approved last night does not have any numbers on it.
Right, it says
And
amounts required.
Everything here says that the number will be on it.
It says the number will be on it?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think that before,
Oh, you're saying everybody else here had said the number will be on it?
Yes.
But it's not on it.
but it says the number that will appear on the town warrant in the debt exclusion ballot. I'm taking it that it will be on the actual ballot, but we did not approve that last. There was no number on the wording for the ballot that we approved last night.
Right, okay. So that wording was prescribed by town council, bond council, the MSBA on the MSBA project. So I can double check on that for you. But like I said, there was legal language. Go ahead.
So I think, if I understand Melissa's question, so the I personally understand because the Finance Committee just voted on the exact same thing this evening that you all saw last night. So there's the town meeting warrant articles, which will be presented to town meeting along with a motion containing a number.
That's correct.
And that's what we voted on. And then the ballot is what will go to the voters on May 13th. That will be a number. Oh, okay.
Right. It just says amounts required. So I'll double check with legal on that. It's a fair question, but yeah, I'll double check with legal on that. But that was the language that was presented to me by the lawyers, and that's what we presented to the select. Right. Let me double check. I know on the motion at town meeting, they'll have the numbers in there. This was the language that's very prescribed by MSBA, their lawyers, and also state law. So I'll double check on. Thank you. Sorry. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Karen Herrick, Vice Chair of the Reading Select Board. So I understand we kind of live in turbulent times at the moment, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and we're still seeing inflationary pressures. And I do understand the comments and the concerns raised by a speaker, a couple of speakers ago, who is also a member of the Finance Committee. So I want to share some of the conversations that are going on in the State House. The Millionaire Surtax bill has been wildly successful, and the governor's proposed budget includes about $1.6 billion in proposed spending that will be coming back to communities for transportation and education. And so that's going to be good news for us. Our staff is continuing to apply for grants. We are about to finish our journey to join Green Communities, which is going to bring a couple $100,000 in a year. I just want to reassure members of the public that while we are experiencing as a Commonwealth and as a country some budget shortfalls in certain areas, there have been no discussions of an operational override. And I'm speaking as one select board member, this is easily verifiable. So I just want to caution, there are absolutely no discussions of an operational override going on. These are two important capital investments in this community. But, and again, I recognize the concerns that people have, but I just want to be very clear. We need to separate important projects like this that will benefit almost everyone in the community, and they're important to keep investing in our community in order to protect our families, to enjoy our community, and to protect the value of our real estate. And once more, I want to repeat that there are no ongoing discussions of a potential operational override. So anything to that effect is pure speculation or just personal worry, which again, I acknowledge. I don't blame people for being worried about that. Thank you.
Hi, Ed Ross, Kensington Ave. I can't remember my precinct. I think I'm 5. I can't remember. So a quick question on, I think this is for you, Matt. On the ReCal project, you're talking about the Pleasant Street Center. Just a quick question on who's, for like future use, who's the governing decision-making body as far as the options as it comes up? You know, you said there's going to be some commercial value estimates. Who then decides from there what we do with that location?
Hi, thanks. Good question. So it's a process. The select board will have some decision-making there, and also town meeting. If we decide to sell it, I believe because it's sale of real estate, they would have to vote to do that. But I think internally, if everything goes as to plan, and we have a vacant building coming up in a couple of years, we would discuss that internally amongst staff, select board, come up with a plan, and then see the legal mechanism to effectuate that. So if it's to sell the building, like I said, I believe that would have to go to town meeting. If there's a rental situation, I think that's something that I could do along with the select.
And then just a separately, you can probably sit now, Matt. Just separately, a separate question, just in regards to the, kind of the operational override question, just to clarify, and just because it has been a hot topic or a consistent topic that's come through the finance committee. I don't think anyone's advocating that one is needed today, but I think it is appropriate to make sure that we're educating everyone in the town as far as what might be happening in the future. So, and no disrespect to anyone's kind of opinions on when it might happen, but I do think that we have to learn from what we've done in the past. And I think as folks that are elected people, I'm elected as a town meeting member. I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're because we all have access to this information and what's happening, and Sharon and Matt and staff do an amazing job of kind of explaining what's happening within a budget and all of the constraints and things that are happening to that. I don't think it's inappropriate to say that these things, we're heading down a path. It's not in 2026, it's not in 2027, but things will have to happen. The override is one of those options. It's not the only option. There's other ones that are out there, but I do think it's and I kind of share Mary Ann's viewpoint in that it is kind of incumbent upon us to make sure that we're talking. Thanks.
If I could just comment on it. So I don't think any of us are saying not to be considering all the different things that are going on. As part of that discussion, though, one of the things that we've also learned is that the costs for buildings, the cost for projects, things like that, it tends to go up every year. And so saying, let's wait a year or 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever, the inevitable piece of that is that project now costs a lot more money to do. And I think that we have all been working very diligently to try to minimize all of the costs, whether it's the construction costs, the interest costs, all those different pieces. So I want to make sure that we're kind of all the different pieces coming together.
Mark, completely agree. And again, I think that's the same vantage point I think that I think many of us bring to that, is that it's more just a reflection of what is today. I mean, anyone kind of within the town that's responsible for spending, everyone operates under that same mantra. So it's not a criticism on the projects by any stretch of the imagination, at least from my perspective. It's more just we're asking, you're going to the voters, and inevitably it's not just this isn't just one conversation. There's going to be a question that's after, and I think that's my point as far as.
Thank you. Linda Snowdoxer, Precinct 1. I have a couple of questions and a clarification. First of all, I want to say thank you. I know how hard each of the committees and our staff have worked on these projects. I've seen it firsthand, and I appreciate all of the work that's been done. I appreciate the contingencies that's been built in and the realism in looking ahead to these projects. So I just want to say a huge, huge thank you, and for how much you've engaged the community along the way. Thank you. One point, a clarification, was I was at the select board meeting last night, and I was under the understanding that the vote was an unofficial vote just to show support that the project should go to the voters, or support of the project, but not the official language of whatever the ballot question would be. So maybe I'm confused.
That was one vote that you're talking about, but they also voted to close the special town meeting warrant and the election warrant, and that's for the other language.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Another clarification I was wondering is about the Killam School. I know that RISE will be centralized at the Killam building, and I'm thrilled about that. I said that at the meeting. Bringing all the staff together, the support systems, parents. I think that's a really good move, a good use of space. I just wanted to clarify, I did not understand that all kindergartners, the full-day kindergartens, they will stay at their respective districts, correct? I just wanted to make sure that people understand that, and that those families are not going to be needing to move their kindergartners to outside their local school.
I'm getting a yes on that from the school department. What you said is correct.
Thank you, because I know that's been a concern in the past. The other question I had was, Sharon, last night you mentioned that there's unused debt that could be applied to working projects that are made under, I'm not a financial whiz, but under similar borrowing conditions. And I'm just wondering, that can lower the cost of these projects. So I'm just wondering if you could explain it a little more. Thank you so much.
So we do have some capital projects that have completed that we borrowed for. And in order to transfer to another project, it has to be equal borrowing terms or greater. And so a building project would be one of the longest borrowing terms. And so any remaining funds we have in capital project funds that have been completed, we could vote to transfer to either one of these projects to reduce the amount that we borrow. I think that we were looking at about 800,000 last night, but I wasn't entirely sure if all of it was available. One of the projects I was unclear if it's done paying its bills. The others have been done for quite some time, and I was pretty confident in the numbers. So there will be, if these projects pass, something at a future town meeting where I'd ask you to transfer these available funds from projects that have been completed to one of these.
Don't go anywhere, Sharon. Chris Haley, 71 Tennyson Road. So Sharon, just to correct my memory, I believe multiple times you have mentioned the potential override looming possibly in early as 2000.
Yes, I have mentioned it, but there's never been anything official about what the timeline will be for an override. I've mentioned that it is definitely close. Our accommodated costs have been growing faster than our revenues. Just like everybody's household budget, we're impacted by that. And so we're using more free cash than we're used to, and it's only going to be a matter of time before an override is needed. The original override that we had in 2018 is already 8 years, and Bob had said 3 to 5 years it would last. So we would be due for one anyway, but inflation isn't helping our situation. And so it is out there as a potential for the next few years of not sure what year, but we may need to do an override within the next few years. I did ask the assessor if we were doing an override of $5 million or $5.5 or $6 million, what that impact would be on an average home. He said the $5 million override would be about a $500 impact to the average home, a $6 million, about $600 and about $550. So he basically gave me the numbers for the average home because I did plan on mentioning it at town meeting so that people are fully informed, fully transparent that it is very possible and that they should include those figures when they're considering these projects and if they're affordable for them.
And that is precisely the reason why that each and every year that your contract is up for renewal, I will be voting yes on it, Sharon, because your commitment to transparency in this entire process is paramount. And I applaud Mary Ann Downing and Ned Endross also for being completely transparent in this process. So thank you to all.
Hi, my name is Nancy Zimlak. I am a member of the Council on Aging as well as a temporary member of the Permanent Building Committee. And I have been involved in this project for a very long time. But tonight, I'd like to speak as a resident and as a senior citizen resident. And I'd like to go back to something that Joe Huggins said about 30 minutes ago about maintenance of town buildings. And we have a number of town buildings, and off the top of my head, I think it was a total of 15 on your chart. And we have to maintain those buildings. And Killam is a very good example of a building whose time has come and it needs to be replaced. The current Pleasant Street Center that houses the senior center program is also a very good example of a building that needs to be replaced. And there's documentation for both of those. I understand that there may be an override down the road, but what are we going to do about maintenance for our current town buildings? And I think that these two town building projects are top priority to fix and to make them work for the town and provide the town residents with the projects or with the building that needs to be in the town for the town residents, children, as well as senior citizens. So we need to figure that out.
Any other questions before we break for the evening? Well, you will have to adjourn your boards if we're ready to do that. Okay. Select board's adjourned. Any other boards have to adjourn? Yes, Joe. Thank you. Any other committees? Joe, Pat. Okay. Okay, any other boards need to adjourn? I think we covered them all. Thank you very much for coming. We're going to do a Zoom version of this next week on the 16th. So there'll be one more bite of the apple to ask us questions, and then on to town meeting after that. So thank you very much for coming. Have a pleasant evening.